If you can't control your emotions, then not only are you going to be stressed and miserable all the time, but you're also going to face a higher propensity of making irrational decisions that you end up regretting later on. And it can be very tempting to blame other people and other things for making us feel a certain way, to blame, say, the traffic for stressing you out because you're stuck in it, or to blame another person for making you upset because they rejected you or they're not texting you back fast enough. But you're not going to get anywhere that way, because the reality is emotions are entirely self-imposed. You are responsible for how you feel and not somebody else or something else. But the good news is, because you're responsible for them, you have complete control over how you feel. And that's what we're going to take a little bit of a closer look at in this video. So before we talk about how to control your emotions, let's take a look at the science behind them. So I'm not a neuroscientist or anything like that, but I do know that generally speaking, all your emotions can be boiled down into is just a release of chemicals in your brain. And that's it. Everything comes down to that. So if you experience something that you think you like, it's because your brain is releasing those good chemicals, in quotes, like dopamine, adrenaline, what have you. And so that can be brought upon by anything from eating ice cream to binge watching a show to getting approval from somebody, etc. And at the same time, if you experience something you think you don't like, it's just because you're experiencing a withdrawal from those chemicals. And so that could be brought upon by somebody rejecting you, like I said earlier, or maybe you embarrassed yourself in front of somebody else, or you didn't get the job, whatever. And so it's just like a drug. So we know that whenever you think you want something, it's not because you actually want that thing, it's instead because you're just chasing the high, in quotes. And we know that nobody else can control how you feel, because nobody can physically stick their hands inside your mind and alter that chemical imbalance. At the end of the day, you're the only one that can do that. So how do you do that? It's just simply a matter of controlling your perception of what happened and your subsequent interpretation of that perception. So let's take those both one at a time. So your perception of something is your understanding of what happened. You know, the events that transpired, what somebody said or did, what have you. And there are two sort of prerequisites here. The first is just perceiving something to begin with, just knowing that it happened. And the second is how you perceive it, whether that's accurate or inaccurate. So just perceiving something to begin with influences how you feel, and as a matter of fact, is required for you to feel a certain way. Because you can't feel a certain way about something unless you've interpreted it, and you can't interpret it unless you've perceived it to begin with. So you could just short circuit the entire process of feeling a certain way about something by just not even perceiving it to begin with, not thinking about it. So take a breakup, for example. If you're sitting at home by yourself feeling miserable over a breakup, then it's not the breakup itself that's causing you to feel that way. Instead, it's you choosing to think about it and fixate on it that's making you feel that way. So you could just as easily choose to not think about that and think about something else and stop those negative emotions from occurring in the first place. Now, the reason I bring up the second prerequisite, which is the accuracy of your perception, is because a lot of people will counter the first point and say, well, you can't just pretend something never happened. And so my response to that is, okay, fine, but how do you know that your perception is accurate to begin with? Because it could just be a figment of your imagination, and yet here you are getting stressed out over something that's not even real to begin with. So we've talked about social anxiety before as an example. Sometimes the reason you feel that way is because you walk into a room and you perceive that everybody around you is scrutinizing you and judging you and waiting for you to make a mistake or something. When in reality, if you just took a look around you, you would find that that's not the case at all. That most people are just too fixated on themselves or talking to somebody else to care about you at all. And yet here you are getting really worried and anxious about something that's just completely made up. Now, your interpretation of your perception is where you're adding significance and meaning to it, which ultimately determines how you feel. And again, you're the one that decides that. No one else decides that for you. So it could be anything from this means that I'm a terrible person, or this means that this person doesn't approve of me, or this means that I'm going to get fired from my job, whatever. And I don't want any of these things, therefore now I start to feel stressed, angry, upset, whatever. So for example, I used to have your stereotypical bad boss. Someone who was really condescending and talked down to me and just made me hate coming into work every day. And I didn't really stand up to them as much as I thought I should have. And so I interpreted all that as though I am a weak and defenseless person because a tough guy would not get treated this way. And so therefore I felt ashamed of myself. But then I realized I could have just interpreted it in any number of more favorable ways. I could have looked at it as, no, I'm making a conscious decision not to stand up to this person because I want to keep my job. And I can easily choose not to do that at any time and leave and find a better job, which is ultimately what I ended up doing. And I'm much better off because of it. I could have also looked at it as, okay, you know what? It's not up to somebody else to determine how tough I am. Only I know how tough I am and what I've been through and what I'm made of. So that was a lot, so let me summarize it with this. The next time you feel something, especially something negative, don't panic. Instead, stop, take a deep breath, and remind yourself that it's just a release of chemicals in your brain. And you can control that through your perception of what happened and your interpretation of that perception. So try it out next time you get a chance. Let me know how it works for you, and I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. See you next time.